this. I just want to find 11,780 votes.
You are asking me to do something against my oath, and I will not break my oath.
The events of January 6th are behind us. With a new election approaching, the certification of a free and fair election is more important now than ever. Anti-democracy forces failed that day. Democracy prevailed. But the question remains, will democracy win again? The real certification for the presidential election begins at the state level. A peaceful and fair election begins here. We must be prepared to ensure the certification of electoral votes from all 50 states remains free from attack. Anti-democracy forces are already plotting to lie, cheat, and pressure local election officials to refuse certification if the results don't go their way.
At Country First, we're launching a nationwide effort to educate voters about the election certification process and to mobilize grassroots volunteers to protect it. We may not know the outcome of the election, but we must be ready to combat anti-democratic forces trying to undermine our elections and democracy. Because if Donald Trump and his allies lose again, they may try to undermine it and our democracy once more. Certifying the vote is not just about this election. It's about the sanctity of our country, of our process, and yes, our democracy. We must stand up to any pressure campaign to overturn a free and fair election. Visit countryfirst.com to learn how you can ensure that every vote is counted freely and fairly. Visit and sign up now. Well, hey everybody, Adam Kinzinger here. Welcome to our Certify the Vote rally. So as you just heard on the video, Country First launched a new program dedicated to ensuring a safe and clean election certification. Tonight, I want to have a discussion on what we're seeing around the country and what we're preparing for in the battleground swing states, particularly as we approach Election Day. So just to jog your memory, the beautiful state of Arizona has unfortunately been held hostage in recent years by conspiracy-ridden politicians like Carrie Lake, a far toss from the old days of John McCain. So she and the other MAGA extremes are more interested in lying to Americans and serving themselves than they are in standing for the Constitution and doing what's right. In Arizona, there's dozens of state legislators, county board of supervisors, and local officials who are blatantly willing to deny election results with the ultimate intention to deliver Donald Trump with a ticket back to the White House. We've also seen several pieces of legislation which would make it harder to vote or even harder to count the votes, even one suggesting that votes should be hand counted. And by sharing all of this, I don't want you to think that these are the only kinds of public officials in Arizona. They're not. There are real leaders serving in office who are able to withstand immense pressure and are the true defenders of democracy. And I've invited one of them to join us here tonight. He's working as Arizona's chief election officer. Please welcome Arizona's Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes. Hey, what's going on, my man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good. Just, we're trying to do everything we can to defend our elections. So thank you for being here tonight. So to kick us off, folks tuning in live tonight, they might not know what the Office of Secretary of State in Arizona is responsible for. One of the most important duties of the office is to provide oversight and administration of secure and accurate elections. Could you help kind of start the discussion off by telling us a little more about this and provide some examples of what you've been doing since taking office in 2023?
Sure thing. First, thanks for having me for this important discussion. Secretaries of State all over the country do a little bit of different stuff state by state, but right here in Arizona, I got business services, I got libraries, and I've got elections. But as the chief election officer in Arizona, I act more like a commissioner for a major league sports league than some other states do. We're a bottom-up state. That means that each county board of supervisors, they're called commissioners in some states, and the elected county recorder, they're the ones where the rubber meets the road. They're the ones who do the voter registration. They take care of the ballots. the tabulation. They do the polling places and all that stuff. What I do is make sure that we've got a clear set of rules. Now, in Arizona, we have what's called an elections procedures manual that I write. And after the governor and the attorney general sign off on it, that becomes the Bible. It's the playbook for all of the counties to do their thing. We don't just let them interpret the statutes on their own. We've got a rule book there. I also certify all the election officials themselves, whether it's the county recorder who's an elected, or the elections director who's an appointed, or any of the other clerks, inspectors, or other officials. We're the ones who issue that certification. I also do logic and accuracy testing on every single one of the machines that tabulate ballots here in Arizona. These tabulators are not voting machines. Let's be clear. We are 100% voting on paper in Arizona, among so many other things, like running legal interference for all of our counties so they can do the work for the voters, and we're the ones that end up in the courtrooms all the time. But that's just a small peek into what we do.
Sounds busy. So, at Country First, we have members from all political backgrounds and all beliefs. There are many tuning in tonight that actually believe these issues must be managed in accordance with the law, and any legitimate claims should be taken into consideration. So, Secretary Fontes, prior to running for office, you were, I think, an attorney, and you practiced law for something like, I guess, over 2 decades. What can you tell us about the legal process with respect to elections and how electoral disputes are handled?
Well, before being Secretary of State, I also, for a short time, was the Maricopa County Recorder for a term. Maricopa County Recorder, you might remember from Cyber Ninja infamy. But I'm the guy who ran the 2020 election here in Phoenix, the greater Phoenix area. One of the things that we look at from the legal perspective is to make sure that the rules are being followed. Look, we operate under the rule of law, and it's that process that has to be taken very seriously. And we will work way ahead of time with the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and the courts directly to make sure that no matter what kinds of challenges we end up facing down the road, everyone understands the playbook. Everybody understands ahead of time how we're going to proceed, because guess what? The calendar doesn't stop for anyone. We will get to the date of ascertainment for the Electoral College. We will get to January 6th and Congress's final duty there. And we will hopefully get to January 20th without too many incidences. But to that end, let me just give you a quick example of one of the things we've done to prepare on the legal side of things. We worked a little bit with the state Supreme Court, and they have issued an administrative order prioritizing every single election challenge that might come before the courts. And that prioritization is really valuable, because what it does is it makes sure that we have finality in our contests as they come forward to solidly execute the duties that we've got. So regardless of your political affiliation, we operate under the rule of law. We're proud of that, and we're making sure that the rules and the processes are laid out well ahead of time so that everybody understands, how they're going to move forward as we proceed.
Well, that's great. And I also, just a quick aside, I want to just take a quick moment and say thank you for your service. So many of you maybe don't know, but Secretary Fontes is also a veteran and served in the Marines. It's not the Air Force, but it's, they try. So what can you share, Mr. Secretary, about your experience in the military and how it's prepared you for, high pressure situations like certifying the 2024 election?
Well, look, being a mission-oriented Marine might be a little different than, hanging around the canteens like y'all did in the Air Force. We really do get to the place, I think, where we lean on that experience. Veterans like you and me and a lot of other folks out there who've chosen public service. It's about the team, right? And the team has a job, and we train real hard to get the job done. There's a lot of similarities that I can speak to. Marines spend a lot of time caring about their equipment, caring about their uniforms, caring about how they work through all of their training. We do the same thing in elections administration. But when it comes to those high pressure situations, it takes someone who's sort of been across the Rubicon in a bunch of different ways to be able to handle the sorts of stuff that we're dealing with now. And, this isn't a, oh, woe is me sort of a thing. But right now we're dealing, for example, with over 30 active lawsuits as against the state of Arizona and their elections officials. We've got to handle all of that. We've got all of our counties who are undersourced when it comes to funding, and we've had to make sure that they are prepared. So doing more with less, frankly, is what the Marines have always done. And that's put me in a position to be able to reach back into some of those different parts of leadership, different parts of training, different parts of the philosophies of teamwork that we have back in those older days when I was wearing the Eagle Globe and Anchor. It translates pretty nicely into the work that we're doing right now. And I'm excited to report to you and your audience that Arizona is going to be ready for 2024.
Oh, that's great. Well, look, it's one of the things that, I've kind of seen out there, by the way, is it seems like some of the election denial people are actually drowning. And I don't want you to necessarily comment on anything you've dealt with, but they're trying to drown some election officials in lawsuits, and many of them personal lawsuits. Brad Raffensperger talking to me about having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of personal money to fight against frivolous lawsuits. It's really a sinister tactic, and one I think we have to continue to be aware of. And to be frank, I mean, unfortunately, the election denial movement's really taken a significant foothold in Arizona state politics. During my time in Congress and since launching the Country First movement, there have been several reports of what seems like officials competing, for who can propose the craziest election interference idea. You're one of the highest ranking officials in the state, and I know how hard you work to push back against these kinds of bad actors and efforts. What can you tell us about the state of democracy in Arizona? What are you seeing on the ground? Is there anything surprising or that you're particularly preparing for?
Well, I think generally speaking, the state of democracy is as follows. It's never been stronger, and let me tell you why. We've been engaged in a slow-rolling civics lesson across the United States of America for the last several years. And if democracy means that the people get to decide who their leaders are, what the policies are going to be that they have to live under, then right now, our democracy is exceptionally strong because we can identify some of its weaknesses better than we ever have before, because we understand the processes as a people better than we ever have before. And while there are people who are fighting hard against it, we see them, we hear them, we know who they are, and we can fight back against them with vigor, if only to protect this democracy. You and I are not of the same political party, but we believe in the same democracy and are fighting for that very system shoulder to shoulder. That means, in my view, that while we may be politically divided in this country in a lot of ways, and those folks might be trying to put a wedge between us and our neighbors and split us away from that civic faith that we should be having in one another as Americans, the state of our democracy is strong because we appreciate it better than ever before. We understand it better than ever before, and we're fighting to protect it right here on our own shores more than we've ever had to do. The threat is real, but we are also more than capable of fighting back right now with more secure, more accountable, more transparent elections than this nation has ever seen. And I'm proud to play a small part in making that happen for all Americans.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate the optimism. I think we need to hear it, and that recognition that, yes, as challenging as things are, the fact that we're aware of it, the fact that we have what I always call this awkward alliance of the saying right, the center, and the left to defend democracy it's really unique, and it's actually a pretty awesome thing. Let me just a quick follow-up from your unique perspective. How do you see things changing in 2025 and beyond? I don't know, better or worse, regardless of who wins the presidency?
Well, depending on who wins the presidency, it's going to be one change one direction, and it might be a hard change the other direction. So I think that there's two possible outcomes. One of them is really dark, and I don't really like to talk about it too much for all of the obvious reasons. The other one is going to be challenging. We still have a reasonably loud, but not as big as people think, portion of the public who just do not want to accept the fact that we have good elections in this country. In fact, they're being cheerled by some folks who are profiting, grifting off of this notion that there might be something wrong with our elections, actually taking money away from their fellow citizens to advance this cockamamie schemes and mythologies. we're going to have to work a little bit harder in civic education spaces. Civil society, I think, is going to have to do a better job. I think the media is going to have to be a little quicker to, if I can say it on your program here, call out the bullshit. And this is all part of the step up that we've seen since 2020. The election denialists, I think, caught a lot of these spaces flat footed. Unthinkable was the way that they seemed to approach the election denialist movement for the first several months in most of 2021. And I think we saw this great number of these folks running for office in 2022, particularly here in Arizona. But here's why I'm hopeful and optimistic. The election denialist candidate in Arizona lost for U.S. Senate, lost for the governor's office, lost for the Secretary of State's office, lost in the Attorney General's office. So when you put it to the entire voting public, you're not going to get the election denialists the wins that they need. We've got gerrymandered spaces where a lot of these folks have a strong foothold, and we're going to have to fight hard about that. It might be a generational fight, but I'm optimistic. I feel good about the way things are going to work through the 2024 election cycle, and I'm glad to be on the right side.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, like generations, or my grandparents, literally fought a world war to defend them, and we're being asked to just basically vote and be engaged in our democracy. It's sad that we're here, but it's a much less sacrifice than many have had to make. And I got to just echo your thing about the grifting, the amount of theft, probably legal theft, I guess, because it's within whatever rules, that is occurring of Americans over this lie. We knew what we found out on the January 6th committee. Close to $300 million was raised on the lie of Stop the Steal, of which none of that money went to stopping any kind of a steal. It just went into pockets of consultants and the former president, and it's disgusting. So, look, I know you're busy. So last question of the night for you, Mr. Secretary, is it goes without saying that tensions and anxieties are pretty high around the country with respect to the election. All of us at Country First, we're firm believers that there's many reasons to have hope, and as you've talked about tonight, and everyone should do their part in voting and advocating for a clean election certification. What advice can you give everyone here tonight as they prepare for Election Day and are trying to mobilize their loved ones and communities to do the same thing?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm happy to end on this piece. Number one thing every single person watching can do, and encourage everyone else to do, where you can and how you can, vote early. Voting early is really one of the best things in the world to do, and here's why. It helps the election administrators, particularly on Election Day. I'll give you a quick example. Here in Maricopa County, Arizona, again, the second largest voting jurisdiction in the country, our two-page, front and back, both pages ballot has over 78 choices and elections on it. That's a lot of democracy, and it's going to take a lot of time to get through that stuff if you're waiting till Election Day. But if you don't wait till Election Day, you don't have to worry about the kid being sick, the flat tire, some other, clogged up traffic on the freeway from here to there. You don't have to worry about the anxiety of making it on Election Day. Get in your polling place, get in your early vote centers wherever you can across the country, whenever you can. The rules are different in every state, but it's two simple words that I would tell everybody to do, and those two words are vote early.
Well, Secretary Fontes, that's all my questions tonight. I want to just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing what's happening in Arizona, and we'll keep you in our thoughts and prayers in the coming weeks. So good luck, and God bless you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great to have me. Go Air Force.
Yeah, thank you. Go Marines. I'll give you that.
Take care.
So the Country First Certify the Vote program is the only one of its kind in the nation. It's dedicated to advocating for a clean and safe election certification process, regardless of the winner. Whoever thought that we would need to do that? But here we are. We need your help in amplifying this message nationwide and in fueling the movement. You can do this by getting a t-shirt from the Country First store. Better yet, everyone tuning in tonight who uses the code VOTE24 will get a discount on their purchase. All proceeds raised go to these efforts, and we organize as we organize around this program through Election Day and through the remainder of the year. It doesn't stop on Election Day. It's probably when it accelerates the most. Additionally, we've identified leaders around the country who are most likely to experience pressure from the extremes to cast doubt on the election process. We're calling on our nationwide volunteer army to join us in calling on these leaders to do their job and certify the vote. So sign up for one of Country First's upcoming volunteer days of action to make calls to legislators around the country. They have to hear from all pro-democracy activists out there, and they can't be only hearing from the trolls and the naysayers. Any time that you can do makes a difference. As a former member of Congress, I can promise you that these calls make a difference, and the message becomes very loud and clear. So if you want to make a real difference, here's your chance. So I want to show a video quickly that Country First volunteers have put together. Let's take a look.
I'm Holly.
Lake.
Hey everyone, it's Tracy from Santa Rosa, California.
Hi, my name is Fred.
Miss Cindy Hudak from Cincinnati, Ohio.
My name is Dave.
Hi, my name is Rick and I live in Miami Beach, Florida.
My name is Ruth Ann.
This is Tim.
Hi, my name is Doug Blatchard.
Hello, this is Curtis from Indiana.
My name is Kerry Moyer.
Election certification.
Election certification.
Election certification is...
Election certification.
There is nothing more sacred to our democracy.
I'm done with the lies.
No more shenanigans.
And pretty pathetic, actually.
May what happened on January 6, 2021 never happen again.
I do not want to repeat.
We need to certify the vote.
Certify the election.
By certifying election
To certify the vote.
We need accountability.
And certify the election honestly and according to the will of the voters.
Without shenanigans.
We're counting on you.
Well, let me just say that's awesome. What a great video. And thank you to everybody that helped make that. And thank you to all of you for everything that you're doing. So now I want to make sure that we're using our time together tonight for thoughtful discussion. We're here at our Country First Certify the Vote rally talking about why it's important to have a clean and safe election certification process for the November 24 election. And there is one example that I'm sure you all know that explains exactly why we're here tonight. And that is the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, the insurrection. America's never faced a greater threat than when Donald Trump created the big lie and convinced so many that the 2020 election was stolen. One man that was there with me, who fought to keep me and my friends safe, was Officer Harry Dunn, who's joining us here tonight. Please, everybody, welcome Officer Harry Dunn. Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Adam, what's up, buddy? Good to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, good to be with you. Life treating you pretty well, I hope, huh? I know you're staying busy.
13 more days, and we're sprinting across this finish line to get it done, my friend.
And then we can all take a vacation. So, look, Thanks for being with us here tonight, and thank you for all that you've been doing since January 6th to push back against the MAGA extremes and to share about your experiences with Americans across the country. There are so many stories involved in that day from so many perspectives. They all matter and they need to be remembered. So could you please briefly share with everyone, why that day changed everything for you and why you still remain more dedicated than ever and not jaded to defending our democracy?
Yeah, Adam, you made a great point. There's so many stories that day. And, you being part of the January 6th committee, you had an opportunity to hear and see a lot of those stories. So anytime I get the opportunity, a platform, I have to acknowledge my former co-workers and the brave men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department who fought so valiantly, so bravely. Sure, everybody recognizes us 4 officers for the most part who testified, but there's so many hundreds of other officers whose names and faces that you'll never know. And people don't realize January 6th happened every year there was an election cycle. But a lot of people didn't realize the process of January 6th until 2021. Hell, a lot of people didn't know that Capitol Police even existed before January 6th. Our job is to keep members of Congress safe so y'all can fulfill your congressional responsibilities, your congressional duty, constitutional obligations. And that's our job, to create a safe environment for you. 13 years before January 6th, I was still a member of the Capitol Police, and I did my job. I protected Republicans, Democrats, independents, people who I agreed with, I didn't agree with. January 6th, it didn't become a breaking point because I still protected those individuals, the liars in Congress, the people who turned their back on the Capitol Police, the DC police, those people who were saying that what we went through, it wasn't a big deal, those people who stood with Donald Trump over law enforcement. I still protected them 3 years after the attack on the Capitol on January 6th because I believed in the democracy. It's not about an individual. It's about these elections and, standing up for what's right, standing up for what we believe in. I kept my political opinions silent until I couldn't. I always believed in standing up and doing what's right, speaking out. And there is an existential threat to this democracy. I mean, those aren't, your words, my words. Donald Trump has said himself he wants to suspend and terminate the Constitution. He said that he wants to be a dictator. In what world does democracy and dictator go together? It doesn't. So it's more important than ever that anybody and everybody who has a platform to do so, to speak out against it and do whatever we can to get Kamala Harris across the finish line.
Yeah, here. Look, I remember when I got to my office, like the window behind me, which overlooked the west front of the Capitol. So I had actually left the floor kind of early. I saw what was happening, and I'm like, I'm not staying on the floor. So by the time I get to my office, I opened that window, and it's just like combat sounds.
Yeah.
And it was when Metro, DC Metro showed up and was using the non-lethal. And for people that say that was nothing, I mean, it was literally the sounds of combat for hours. It was crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, it's nuts. And you lived through it, even more than I did. But I want to say real quick, we started this, Certify the Vote program because, we're deeply worried about things like January 6th happening again. But I think my concern now is it's not going to be the U.S. Capitol, but at state capitals around the United States when each state will have to certify who won. You've been traveling around the country. You've been meeting with different kinds of people discussing this reality. What do you have to say to police officers like you who are watching what's happening and maybe feeling a little uneasy about what's to come, in the days after November 5th?
I wish I could sit here and say that everything's going to be fine. But I don't know that it is. The precedent has been set. And you know what? One of the things that, speaking of precedent, one of the things that accountability brings forth is a deterrent to keep somebody from doing something again. Now, sure, there were hundreds of people who were found guilty, who pled guilty for their crimes, for their roles on January 6th, several people. But Donald Trump has not. So what's to keep him from doing and inciting another riot? And it's so fitting that you had your last guest on, the Secretary of State from Arizona. I mean, one of the candidates running for Senate now, Carrie Lake, has been one of the biggest election deniers there is. And that's what fanned the flames and started what happened on January 6th. As they were there, the rioters were there, they were telling us that they were stopping the steal. The election was stolen, and that was the rhetoric that people like Carrie Lake and Donald Trump were peddling. And they're still peddling it to this day. I mean, if you remember back to the debate when Donald Trump was asked when he was against Joe Biden, he was asked 3 different times would he be able to accept the results of the election, and he wouldn't commit to it on 3 separate occasions. So I think the precedent has been set, but I do think that law enforcement, they step up, they answer the call. And just like me and my coworkers did, it didn't care. We were protecting Mitch McConnell just as much as we were protecting Nancy Pelosi. Democrat, Republican, it didn't matter. We were doing our job. We have our grievances and we do it at the ballot box, but that's not how adults are supposed to behave. That's not how Americans are supposed to behave. But I do think that law enforcement will be ready because there has been a precedent set for it.
Well, and this is what happens. You take your oath seriously, and unfortunately, most of my colleagues on the Republican side did not take their oath seriously. So I think it's interesting that we both find ourselves here tonight. We both were just going about our jobs and daily lives back then, doing our part, trying to turn the temperature down. But I believe, we both learned a lot since then. We all need to learn from history. So what can you share with everyone about, how to think about where we currently are and why the fight isn't over yet? People feel so discouraged. Why isn't the fight over yet?
because the threat is still exists. The threat is still there. I mean, hell, Adam, it's no secret. You're a conservative Republican. I'm a liberal Democrat. But look at it. We're able to come together. We're sit down. We can be friends. We have discussion. We've sat down on numerous occasions and talked about.
We had a few beers together too.
Yeah, you could do that, and that's what civility is about. We realize we have so much more in common than we do that divides us. But you have to be honest about where we are in the state of this nation. And Donald Trump is a threat to it. And if people can't acknowledge that the election wasn't stolen, then how the hell can you formulate a policy about a women's reproductive rights or securing the border? You can't even agree that the election wasn't stolen, and you want to talk about solving the border crisis. I mean, they're not serious people in Congress right now. And Donald Trump would only further that chaos that ensues in this country. So we need to get back to just having civil discussions with each other and being able to talk with each other about our differences and be real with each other.
Yeah, amen to that. Look, that's all from me tonight. I appreciate you, Harry. And as you implied, and I just want to let everybody know, you and I have become genuine friends through all this. And I think the stupidest thing to pick a friend based on is what their political view is, because there's nothing more boring in a friendship than that. And so you and I, even if we have a different view on some things, we enjoyed hanging out. We enjoyed drinking beer and talking about stuff. And I'm proud to call you a friend. So God bless you. And thanks for continuing to fight the fight. And I'm sure you're going to keep doing it even after Election Day. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. It's always great to be with you. And let's grab a beer soon.
Yeah, you bet. Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, my friend.
See ya. So to those tuning in, thank you for joining tonight's Certify the Vote Campfire. If you'd like to get more information on how you can make sure that you have all the information you need before the election or to support efforts to get others out and to vote, please sign up at countryfirst.com, country1st.com. Tonight, you have the opportunity to meet people just like you who want to defend democracy and who believe in a clean and safe election certification process. Right now, we're about to open up our Country First breakout rooms for you to log on, get on camera, and share what's on your mind after tonight's conversation. You can go to countryfirst.com/campfire to join the discussion. I'd really love to see all of you there and hear from you and to hear what you have to think. We're going to post a link here shortly. So thank you again for being here tonight. I'm Adam Kinzinger. Have a wonderful evening.